Welcome to the Lindsay and Tony podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 96, How Your Environment Impacts Your Creation Process. In this episode, we share studies with you along with our insights on the creation process and how your physical environment, everything that is in it, actually impacts your ability and your stamina when it comes to the creation process. I hope everybody enjoys the show.
Hi guys, welcome back. We're so excited that you're here. Today's episode is all about how your environment
impacts your creation process.
So this is actually something that we always talk about when we're creating. We have to be in the right environment. If we're not, things don't feel the same, right?
Definitely. We're always in everything is part of the environment too. Every little detail.
It's even an added bonus, like Romeo
right here is totally transforming this environment compared to what it would have been. And he helps me and Lindsay neutralize everything between us, and you know, when we're trying to get the camera going and all of that, he kind of chills everybody out. But he does every little piece. So animals, dogs or cats, any kind of animals are brilliant, I think, to put in work environments. Definitely. I know some real estate agents that do that. I know like some schools that are teachers. They'll bring dogs into the program. Right, and we do Camp Circle of Love. It's a grief camp, and they always have a therapy dog that walks around with the kids when they're going through. Benji. Is Benji still the one there? Yeah, I think he should still be there. Yeah. So, yeah, there's so many different ways, but I think the big thing with having that creative flow come through, you want to be in the least amount of stress that you can be in, right? So it has to be peaceful and harmonious. So we both actually did some research on studies that benefit these times. We did. And this is for people that are teachers, that are creatives, that paint, that do anything that has to do with the creation process and being creative, which I think this covers everybody, because everybody should be tapped into that creativity within themselves. Right. Even mediums, intuitive, and healers, you want to make sure you're thinking about this when you're working in doing readings, because it is using that same part of the brain when you're creating content for your clients. And even if you're a mechanic or you're working in construction, this is another thing that you should think of too, of what types of places you're choosing to work in, what kind of environment. Right, you might be drawing up the different buildings and the picture or whatever, I don't know what they're called, but like the layout, the architecture, the layout, the blueprints, and everybody has, I think, office work and creativity within a lot of the industries, and pretty much everybody listening to us, I think, for sure. So anytime you're doing that creativity in your business, you're trying to create something, pay attention to what we're talking about in this podcast episode. And if you are working at a job where you're feeling like you're not using your creativity, think about how you could include that in the work that you're doing too. Absolutely, using the tips that we give you here. Yes. So, should I do my study first? Let's do it. Okay. So, I found a study by Ulrich and Zimming. They're authors of information from something called The Role of Physical Environment in the 21st Century Hospital. Now, I'm not a person that likes hospitals at all, but I found this study and I thought it was really powerful. And they actually gathered more than 600 studies that show different aspects of healthcare design and how it can influence medical outcomes. So the outcomes of the way that the nurses feel working in the environment, how the patients feel, the stress levels, and they found that conventional designs of hospitals actually cause more stress. And then stress in patients and nurses. And then what they found, improving the physical environment actually made them feel less stress, more safe, and they noticed a huge difference in the emotions of the patients too, and nurses. So what I want to talk about, this is really important, and this goes along with all of this evidence that I'm going to share goes along with the creativity environment when you're working in that creative When you're working from your creative space.
When you're working, it's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
When you're working in your creative space, you need a good environment. That's
Absolutely.
what it is. So this was interesting. They found with all those bits of information that were gathered that there were 5 environmental factors that played a huge role in improving outcomes with less stress. So the first one that they found, which makes so much sense, if I can flip this over and make sure it's increase in nature connection. So this can be even having a view for 3 to 5 minutes of an aquarium or gardens outside. So having windows in the space that you're working from. This is specifically geared towards hospitals, they noticed. So if there's
which I think that's a great study to talk about, because hospitals are always this dreary type of intense environment. So how can we maximize that environment?
Exactly. If you can do this in hospitals and they can test the stress levels and blood pressure, imagine putting this in a space that you're working in.
Right. Something that you actually already love and are drawn towards.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So they said even 3 to 5 minutes of having a view of that nature connection of aquarium or gardens. Imagine being inside, working it with your creativity in nature in general, not just viewing. Imagine how powerful that is.
Like in a nice park, and you say you're in a downtown area, there's always really nice parks with trees and grass and all that.
I know we've been outside and we'll sit outside at a coffee shop, or we'll sit in the middle of Hyde Park and we'll get work done right around trees. And I feel like it flows more effortlessly for me. And then number 2 is offer options, choices to be able to adjust the lighting and the temperature. So that actually caused less stress. So for nurses to be able to do that, you know, it doesn't have to be just the patients, but if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense. So I think lighting is a huge piece when we're working. Don't you find that having natural sunlight
is 100% a huge piece? Because when I was teaching in the public schools, I had what do you call those lights? Fluorescent lighting. So that would totally mess with me. I mean, I'd be seeing like almost double vision at times by the end of the day. It was really strange. So I'm a huge believer. Like, that's the opposite end of it, being stuck inside without much lighting. I think on the other end of it, with natural lighting, it does the exact opposite. It'll center you. It'll bring everything that study's saying.
That's what I was going to give an example of too with the kids. I remember when it was nice and sunny outside, because I had a bunch of windows in this one classroom, and I would open the windows to get fresh air a lot of the times, and then I would shut off the lights and have that natural sunlight, and I found a whole different energy in my classroom. It felt like we were in the zone of like that nature and the peace and that sort of thing. So it was really good. And then, so number 2 is, I already read that one. And adding music, like having that ability to add music. And that's something both of us used in our classrooms. Oh,
absolutely. It made sense. Dr. Emoto's water study really opened my eyes for that, which we talk a lot about in our podcast because it's so powerful. The power of music and how it transforms us at the cellular level.
Yeah, and in this study, they say that giving them a choice to be able to change the music and doing that, then this was like the big thing, to offer options or choices.
That's interesting, because in my classroom, I did that with my students to an extent, because they would pick different songs that everybody's cussing and you can't do that. So, but to an extent, I would let them pick, and there's this freedom in it. It's like a lightness you feel in the classroom compared to, we're listening to this and this is how it's going to be, my rules. So I could resonate with that.
So that's 100%. Like an example of like when we're creating and we're in that zone of work related stuff, maybe you do have headphones on. Where you have the ability to put the headphones on when you're in a coffee shop because you don't want to hear the background noise and you want your choice of your own song. So think about that too. It could be instrumental, it could be a motivational speaker, it could be whatever you want. Number 3, and I'm almost done because I want to hear your study too. Enhance the social interaction. So they found with adding comfy furniture and having the ability, if they wanted their friends or family to stay overnight, to be in a comfortable space, they noticed a huge reduced stress levels when they had family or friends around. So it improved heart rate, the heart rate in heart recovery patients and also in cancer patients too. So just enhancing your social connection. And I think that's important when you're working. When you're creating, sometimes you're kind of in your own space, your creation mode, but it's nice to kind of mix it up and take a break and socialize.
Right. It reminds me of, well, think about it. I think all the coffee shops studied the same study here because they set up everything where it's comfortable, social setting, for obvious reasons, because coffee's a social thing. So yesterday I was working with my friend Dwayne at a coffee shop. We started at a coffee shop and then we went to a restaurant after that. But the point is, we both worked a little bit and then we talked for maybe, about 30% of the time, 20% of the time, but just having that, social interaction compared to having somebody there with it, because that's part of the environment, having somebody with you as you're studying. It's kind of like, it works as a little mastermind.
It does.
In a sense. And it totally took the edge off. It made me to where I felt more creative. I know Dwayne was like kind of shocked at how much work he was completed. So there's so much power in it. And this is like, if you think about this, what we're talking about on the common sense level, this is common sense. It's like, oh, duh, that doesn't make sense. But I think that it's easy to forget these things, and it's easy to get caught up in a routine to where we're working in our home office or at the same coffee shop every day that we may not even like, or we may not like the vibe anymore, but we're not really thinking about it in this way.
Right, that's true. And I think that's important to pay attention to where you get really excited to walk in.
Right.
Like I get so excited to walk into Oxford Exchange.
Right.
To do my private readings when I'm doing in-person.
Because it's beautiful. Everything's neatly placed compared to the opposite, like my office in the other room in here. Before we redid my floor.
Yeah, I know.
Before we redid the floor and everything, which we just did about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Feels so different.
I had it was cluttered. It was like, and then once I got everything out of there and we got the old carpet out, and it made me want to keep organizing everything. And I got rid of different things, and then there's less stuff in there. It's more organized. And when I go to make my videos now, my lives or any trainings I'm doing, or when I'm doing an intuitive coaching session with somebody, everything just feels, no matter what I'm doing, it feels way more easier to work in there. Way more easier to, just there's this aliveness in the room that was not there before. So
exactly. And that
thank you for recommending new floors, Lindsay.
You're welcome. Feels so different in here. So that goes along with that the comfy space.
The comfy space.
Okay, so 2 more. One is reduce environment stressors. So this could be noise stressors. And it's funny because downstairs when I was writing this out, the TV was on. It was ESPN, and they're like going back and forth debating something. I know you like the sound of that. For me, that is a noise stressor because I'm hearing the voices.
It's not necessarily like the sound of it. I just like the information.
You like the information. I can't deal with the sound. I was like, oh my God, can they at least talk to each other and not go back and forth like that? But what they notice is when they have noise stressors like pagers in the hospital or beepers, they notice increased heart rate and also blood pressure. So in a good design that they decided to create, it was the noise reducing moment where they could have they'd set up the hospital in a way where it's not as noisy, whether it was soundproof areas or whatever it may be. They found a huge difference with those heart rates going down and the blood pressure going down too. And the last one, number 5, is provide pleasant diversion. So they said if you have artwork in the hospital that is of nature or fireplaces, not abstract art though. They specifically said fireplaces or nature. They noticed a big difference. Less anxiety, less stress, needed less medication. So imagine that. So it made me think of in our classroom, there were times when we were allowed to have the TVs like kind of playing in the background. I would put nature or like mind movies. I would create, like have kids be able to see that in the background, like waterfalls, and they even did that with
which it makes sense because if you think about humans over that makes sense. It's a great thing to do in the classroom, or if you're doing a workshop or your retreats, you do that same thing. You add that same twist. But it reminded me of when you're talking about nature and all of this, the documentary, I forget what it's called, but it's based around once we started wearing shoes and put rubber between our feet and the ground, people stopped being grounded. They stopped, and it started to cause a lot of these different symptoms, diseases, dis-ease, a body not at ease because we're not grounded. We don't have we got the rubber between our feet and the ground. The reason why I say that is because with nature, it makes sense. That's our natural instinct. That's our natural ability. We used to run through forest. We used to, get our food through that. We used to go hunting and all of that. So when you take us out of that and you put us in this box with fake lights, with fake everything, of course, putting up a picture of our true nature inside there, we kind of start to bring our soul back into it. But I said all of that to make a point that as much as you could include nature into your environment, even when you're inside, whether it's like an ocean sound or whatever, the different things or a plant, live plants that are alive inside your house, real plants, and or anything that you do. I think it's that kind of alone, because we know that nature vibrates at the perfect frequency as well. There's studies after study that proves that. That's why when you go into the woods, you feel, people say, hey, I walked through the woods yesterday and I just felt so peaceful for some reason.
That's true. You know how I always get drawn to, in Oxford Exchange, there's I call it the sunroom, but it's the room with
the restaurant,
a little water fountain, and has the skylight. It's a certain energy because it's so bright and sunny, and it reminds me of that. But it is true. In that book that the research that you're talking about the rubber against the ground, I want to say it's called earthing.
That sounds like it is.
I don't know if it's up on the shelf that I can see. It could be in the other room.
It's all right. If you know it, please comment below. And
we've shared that book before.
Right.
I've shared it with my students.
And another thing, comment too. If you have any questions about any of the content we're talking about here, type them in the comments below, because we will be doing a weekly, either both of us, or one of us will be doing a weekly Q&A for each podcast episode if you follow us on our public figure page on social media and on Facebook. So if you have any questions, type them in the comments below, so that way we can take them and then answer them also on the live eventually, whenever we do it. So
So I'm curious to hear, because if we can take this from hospital studies to our creative process, it's less stress. That's huge.
It is huge. So my study is a little bit more simple. I actually read your study.
You did?
And then I kept reading it, and I'm like, where do I go with this?
I know. It took
and I know you felt the same way.
Yeah.
But that's a beautiful study. And I will add to yours, as I remember reading the part about that where they said the place, like the tools and the resources that they would have for the nurses in some of the hospitals that were not designed well, they were all over the place. So where the nurses were walking all over.
I didn't
so it's
that part.
That reminded me to intelligently put your stuff to where it's exactly where you need it. Be very organized. And coming from me, I'm not the best at this, but I'm getting better. And what I can tell you is I'm realizing the value in it and how the energy, how clear it is. So there we go.
I'm just thinking of
Professor Juliet, what was that?
I'm thinking of your wallet and keys.
Yeah, you helped me with that a big time. Professor Juliet Zhu, she did a study and she submitted it to the Journal of Consumer Research. And in this study, it's talking about cluttered, like when a room's cluttered or if a room's not cluttered and very organized, kind of like what we've been talking about the whole time. And they did a study where they had two identical rooms. One of the rooms was very cluttered, the other one was very organized. And they put these puzzles in each room, the same puzzle. And it was one of those puzzles where it has a figure and you have to outline the figure, and then without lifting up your pen, you got to complete each dot, and then without going over the line twice.
Okay.
Here's the catch though, the puzzle was unsolvable. And they did that for a reason, because they wanted to see how long these people would attempt to try to solve the puzzle, and if there was a difference in time frames between the cluttered room and the organized room. And there was. They found that people in the organized room, they spent a lot more much longer time on trying to figure out the puzzle, the unsolvable puzzle, compared to people in the cluttered room. And this is common sense, but think about it. How many times have you been to where you're trying to get work done either in college or for your work or your business, and you're like, I have no more energy to do this? Well, maximizing your environment, making it to where it's not cluttered and having everything very organized will give you that extra edge to where you're not going to hit that wall as fast.
That is an awesome study. I didn't find that one at all. I didn't even see that pop up.
I noticed. No, I'm kidding.
But my study was good too. I think the two
your study was great. It was great.
The two together prove the power of having things a certain way and feels safe and
yes.
less stressful, and that's where creativity can really flourish.
Yes. So I think that's it.
Yeah. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and we can't wait to see you next time. Remember, share your comments and questions with us. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.